just the invitation alone spoke to something inside me that made me feel like there's more. There's more than talking about sports. There's more than talking about weather. There's more than talking about work, you know. So I thought, okay, I'll try it. But then I saw it was Saturday at 7 o'clock. I'm like, that's a typo. Is that, you doing that just because of the group? What's with that? The honesty in the first meeting and the authenticity in the first meeting was a little bracing. And by the second or third meeting, I was completely hooked. And it wasn't, you know, the thought of 50 holy men in the room. It was 50, however many men there are, who care about holiness. And what's behind that is be good at and care about the people, you know, that are in your work life, in your family life, and in your social life. But there's one other person, and add that to the mix, and everything starts to take on a different color. And it's, can you be good in your spiritual life? Can you be good with the core of what gives you fulfillment? And when you think about Christ in the room, what am I doing in that relationship? And that's, to me, the pursuit of holiness is just, how can I get closer to you?
And Barry, for you, I mean, you were the one opening the door.
I had an invitation.
Yeah, can you describe that?
My wonderful wife, as a Christmas present many years ago, gave me a paid spot for the last men's conference at Steubenville. And she just, out of the blue, gave it to me for Christmas, and it was the following June. So I went, and I went by myself, and I really liked it. And it really lit me up, and I thought, man, we need something like this back at our parish. Started small. I think we started with 5 guys, and grew from there. So it came from a personal invitation from my beautiful wife, Gina.
I'm looking for I've never heard that story before.
Yeah.
I didn't know that's how it started.
Yeah, this whole thing started because of a woman.
That's fantastic.
It's not easy, especially as a guy. These are not the typical conversations guys engage in. It's not bar talk. It's not work talk. It's not sports talk. The best description I'll give you of what the experience was like with the men's group for me, when I was first working for Accenture in Washington, D.C. years ago, they had us all come together and they introduced that they were going to be putting voicemail into the office. And I had never heard of voicemail. And I thought, what do we need voicemail for? It's like an answering machine. You know, people can just take messages. What's the issue? Within 30 days, I thought it was the greatest thing, and I couldn't have imagined why I would ever not want that in my life. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, but in 2010, my wife answered a call, a real stirring curiosity to pursue Christianity, and she decided she wanted to become Catholic, which is a great blessing in our marriage. And during some part of RCIA, they announced that there was a men's prayer group that was going to be really reforming. It already existed, but it was small, and it was meeting at somebody's house, and it was going to expand and invite more people. It took one session of the men's group during that Lent of 2011 for me to feel the same way as I did about voicemail times whatever, a megazillion at a soul level, which is I don't know how I had been operating without all of those touch points and all that deeply felt inspiration and wisdom that was being shared by people whose names I didn't even know. And when I got to learn their names, I only knew their first names, not their last names, or where they grew up, or what they did for a living. But all these people were open and vulnerable, and they just shared stuff that bothered them about faith, or stuff that they employed in their faith that was useful to them, and miracles that have happened, small or medium, in their lives. And to watch that in a group of dozens of guys, there was nothing common. These weren't holy rollers, these weren't, I mean, a lot of them were just regular Sunday Catholics, etc., but significantly provided a significant outlet that was perfectly in tone with the metronome that my heart could operate with. And I felt a closeness. I saw it as a blessing from God himself. It created relationships for me that absolutely deepened and strengthened my presence in the parish and my desire to serve. And it was a big thing. So God, through my wife coming into the church and RCIA, called me to a closer relationship with him and enhanced my Mass going experience and my prayer life, and I got to hear what others were doing and things that worked for them, and experiences they had that were honest and humble, and it was life-changing. And it's still very, very important to me, very fulfilling. And I've invited many people as well to hopefully have the same experience I had.
It's as much, there's really 50 broken men committed to working on our holiness. And that's what's so great about the group, because you realize you're not the only broken one.
We have some men who have gone through recovery, and in essence, all of us are going through recovery. Not from, some guys drugs, some guys alcohol, but all of us have something we have to deal with. Everybody has a cross. So, yeah.
And the best part is knowing. The thing that drew me in was knowing. I think the world wants to isolate, right? It wants to tell you that you're the only one going through this, or you're the only one that's dealing with this, and you're not good enough. And when you go to a group like this and you get the honesty that you guys are talking about, which is what it's been every time you go, you realize you're not alone. You realize that there's other people that are going through exactly the same thing, other men who are going through exactly the same thing. You can let your guard down a little bit. You can be a little more vulnerable with these men, and that's the way that's the way you heal. That's the way that brokenness starts to at least fix itself a little bit.
Yeah.
And everybody's on their own journey. You can't compare yourself to the next person. You're on your own journey, and sometimes it's going to be your first day in, and you got to start sort of with that step. So it's not about comparing to the others. It's, each of us are on our own journey.
I actually have one. It happened early on when I was going when Barry was at his house. And I think I was still maybe, not fully engaged in the whole thing. And I remember leaving your house. You probably won't remember this, but you came up to me. It was you and I out in the front yard, and you said, "Are you okay? Everything all right with you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. No problem. No. Yeah, thanks for asking." Got in my car and was mad. I'm like, well, what's he talking about? Is something wrong with me? No, nothing is wrong with me. I'm fine. I'm totally fine. The truth is, I was in trouble. I was, at the time, this is years ago, I'd been struggling, very frankly, with the financial situation that we were having, and it was bad. It was a dark time in our lives, in our marriage, and our whole family. And I finally came to grips with that, and it was really because of that, somebody reaching out to me, Barry reaching out to me and asking me if everything was all right. It like put it in the forefront of my mind. And it's, again, talking about healing and trying to fix that brokenness, it started me down the path of like, you know what, I got to give this up to something, a higher power than just me. I'm not the guy that can control that. Men want to control everything. They think they can fix everything themselves. And I was trying to do that at the time. But your question to me about whether or not everything was okay, and me pretending it was an epiphany moment. I'm like, no, it's not okay. There's some struggles here. And so that was major. That was a big kind of like, maybe I need to look at this, my faith a little bit deeper. Maybe I need to, look inside myself a little bit more, and maybe put it at the cross a little bit more than just trying to keep it all in myself. And it also motivates you to, and it makes you think that, you walk down the street and you see people who you either think have it all, or you think they've got it all together, or you think they look fine, and everybody's got a little something there. Everybody's got a story. Everybody's got something in them that needs to be fixed. And just taking, seriously, 10 seconds to ask somebody if they're okay. And I didn't even tell you what was wrong, but just putting that thought in somebody's mind, man, makes a huge difference. It changed the way I deal with people, and it makes me want to reach out to people more and kind of check in with people every once in a while to see if everything's okay.
It's cradle Catholic, but I got stunted somewhere along the way, even though I went to Catholic schools through college, with a God in the clouds image. It was the practice of Catholicism was dogma, and God is the prime mover who starts life for everyone and puts all the rules in place, and then it's up to us to follow those rules, and then we hope that we end up with a thumbs up, not a thumbs down at the pearly gate. My heart was not a function. It was just a report card. That was all. I was just trying to do my homework so that I'd get a good report card at the end and pass, right? So it definitely changed probably in my maybe around age 40. And I had a few friends, including an evangelical Protestant, who gave me a much different perspective of God in the living room, God in the car, God at a sporting match, just a living God who's present. And I had to work my head around that because that wasn't the image that I had, and I had to revamp that. But then I was searching more. I was definitely searching more. And searching in Scripture for the first time, because even though I was Catholic and had gone to all these Catholic schools, I only knew the common, the prodigal son. Oh, I can tell you that story, kinda, but what book is it in? Yeah. The Bible. At that point, maybe in about 2005, I realized that there was another, not just room in the house, but another whole floor in the house of experiences, and that the Catholic Church had so many different opportunities for me to avail myself of, including how the saints live their lives, or what happens at the church outside of Sunday Mass. There are people going in there every day. Why? Oh, there's a daily Mass? And that was actually directly from men's group. I watched guys rushing out of there at 8 minutes of 9, and I thought, why? And we're heading to church. And I said, there's church? Isn't it Saturday? And a lot of the other ministry areas that I've gotten exposed to now, like the marriage preparation pre-Cana, that was an offshot of wondering, now that my wife has shown this interest, what can we do together that allows us both to live the faith a little more meaningfully? And in all that, though, I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn about God, and then unintentionally realized that I wanted to learn to be with God, to have something that resonated, because I was so filled with gratitude for His patience to be part of my life after all the years of intransigence and ignoring Him and all the rest of the things that happen in a mostly secular lifestyle, that I couldn't think of, and I still can't think of enough ways to say thank you and to want to love Him back. when Barry talked about that we're all in some form of recovery in a sense, and I was thinking, what is it that I've been addicted to? And I have to say it would be myself. And it's a bad drug. I spent a lot of time trying to polish up the perfect Frank for the world, the one that would look good and appear confident and be a good performer at fill in the blank, school, work, whatever. And I would ignore my own weaknesses. So there was an older gentleman in the group named Jim, and very gently and humbly one day with a sweet smile, he said, I may not be much, but I'm all I ever think about. And it was so funny and it was so true. And I thought of when I was most fulfilled, and it's when I wasn't serving myself and trying to pick up and polish my own apple, and maybe reaching out in some way to take whatever I have as, the limits of gifts and use them for something that's fruitful for somebody else's benefit. And the parallel, of course, of God always reaching out. Everywhere in the Old Testament, his people fall, and then he reaches back out to lift them up. And his greatest reach out was when he sent his son / himself permanently for all time to try to address our falling and to give us a guidepost and to show us that sacrifice is exactly what he's looking for from us as well. So that quote from Jim X, unknown, is perfect. And he did it with obviously a little humor too. So as in, don't take yourself to the whipping post, like every saint has a past and every sinner has a future.
I thought, similar to Frank, that I could do it all myself. When that revelation came at rock bottom, that I cannot do this alone, then I think when you reach out and just say, I need something bigger than humanity can give me, bigger than any human can give me in order for me to begin my healing of my brokenness, when you find that out and say it is not coming from humankind, when you get to that point of brokenness, then the healing begins. But I think that fortunate or unfortunate, however you want to look at it, that the realization that you, by yourself, cannot heal the brokenness. There's a void there that has to be filled with something greater and bigger than what humans can provide. And that was a big pivot in my relationship with our dear Lord.
Let me give a compliment to that, which is that everybody has stuff, like Chris said. Everybody's got their journey, and they've got pitfalls, and they've taken the wrong turn, and they hit a bump, or fell into a pothole, or whatever. But I think there's a lot of also complacency or moderate satisfaction, right? Or maybe people ignoring their situation. So even if...
Or medicating.
Yeah, it could be self-medicating, right? But even if you're not focused on or absorbed with the problems in your life, and everybody has problems, there's so much more that every one of us has, that we're designed for, that if we leave that portion of the equation out, we're missing a huge part of life, and everybody deserves that. They deserve that. They should open that door and take that invitation and take that yes. And the invitation may come through the mouthpiece of another, friend or another guy or whatever, but it's really coming, Christ is standing there, and it's your maker. It's the guy who figured out all the rules. It's the one who figured out F equals MA and everything that works in science, and he's figured you out too. And I forget who says this all the time, but I'm still reading the operating manual on this thing, and it's very complicated. I'm having trouble with it, But the guy who made me, that's a good place to turn and just add that incredible element to life. It's similar if you've played a sport that you like, but it doesn't like you as much. For me, it's golf. I'm not a good golfer, but there's a couple of shots every time I go out that all the rest of the bad shots fade away, and I remember those good shots, and I remember that experience, and I think, I'd like to do that again. And it's happened at the men's group the same way. I have found something that allows me to respect someone, but also it's the Holy Spirit saying, I'm going to inspire you through your brothers, not just through Scripture, not just through communion, but I'm going to inspire you through these group of people that you don't really know that well, and share what you need to hear in a way you need to hear it today. Barry has become a father figure for most of the men in the group, including the guys older than him. I'll say he could be like the uncle that you loved to be with, but he has a mission, and he is living that mission in what he shares. And he is an incredible resource, and he's so knowledgeable, but better yet, he has a special gift. He has a gift. Not everybody has the same gifts. Barry is aware of his gift and has chosen to share his gift, and all of us have been elevated because of that gift, and I hope our families are elevated and our work within the parish is elevated, and so the boats float up. And there are people who complain about things getting worse, but it's just what you choose to focus on. There's no question that I can look and see what's happened with the men's group directly from Barry and consider that he's one of many examples of what is getting better. So the scriptures say that faith is a gift. That God is primary. God calls those who come to him. And I have been praying for God to make that call heard for my children. I believe he has called them, and I believe through their baptism that they have the opportunity to access that. But that's the most common prayer for me, is that my children hear what as of yet has not been a resounding sound to them, which is they do not yet know the depth of God's love. And I also am definitely praying for the institution of marriage, that everyone sees the beauty of that vocation, except if they have a vocation that's clearly toward the religious life. I believe it's God's building block. In fact, I think the Christian life is more manifest in marriage than it is in any other way, because we give ourselves fully to someone and permanently to someone, and I think that's what God's desire for charity is. I think the devil is very happy when we dwell on the 5% of our lives that's either incomplete or imperfect, and not the 95% that's a ridiculous, undeserved gift, and how much gratitude we can have for everything. The list is so long, it's ridiculous, right? But not just I'm talking about comfort and success, but the loving relationships that we didn't even know. I mean, people who have touched our lives, and like a small touch on the knee that opens up a whole window. But all of those things that we have yet to experience, we don't even know what he has got in store for us. And it's all these good things. There's all these good relationships and good experiences and even suffering that will yield incredible fruit. I don't think God brought us here to leave us flat, just the opposite. He brought us here to climb the mountain together, and when I'm struggling, he'll pick me up. So that realization for faith for my kids, but that fullness of faith, that's something that I pray for ardently, regularly. But that fullness, that goodness can come, as Barry was saying about Don, through, or even Jerry talked about, through something that seems like a bad experience, that we all want to avoid suffering, and the world tells you avoid suffering, and suffering is bad, and just lather yourself over with comfort and physical goods and cell phones and big screen TVs and Alexis, even if it's used, and somehow there's not great fulfillment coming from the pile of all those things. There is a living God who wants a relationship, and I think he's thrilled when we start even struggling our way toward that relationship. We'll never have that perfect relationship until we're sitting with him eye to eye, but the kingdom is alive here on the earth, and he wants us to partake of it. I think all of life makes so much more sense in the order of God started it, God gave us not just life, but creation and one another and a plan and a purpose, whatever it might be. And he's going to stay involved. He's going to stay involved in the choices that I make, and he'll try to keep cleaning up when I make mistakes, and he'll provide an access for me to say, I'm sorry and I want to rectify our relationship to the best that it can be. And he'll say, I understand and I'm there for you.